You should be good.
So I will call the advisory committee meeting to order at 6:32 p.m. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, section 18, and the governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, the meeting of the Southport Advisory Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information in the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding the meeting at www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post to Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. I think we'd have that memorized by now. Okay, hello everybody. So let's get started. So let's approve the minutes from November 12th, 2020, and good job on the minutes, Claire and Andrew. So any comments, any changes on those minutes?
I had a few.
Right, go ahead, Jason.
Page 2, line 4, where we talk about Carol retired at the end of November, which is 7 months earlier than she originally planned. Filling that position will take place during budget discussion. I didn't understand what that meant.
No, I'd suggest it's getting rid of that line. So I think what they mean is that whether their position gets filled or not will be part of the budget for the BOS for fiscal year 22. So I think that's what it's meant there, but I'm not sure you need that last sentence to define it. I just say that she is retiring 7 months early.
Yeah,
I
that
agree.
was,
We can just strike it.
yeah, I put that in, it was only because it was mentioned in the conversation that that particular position would come up, discussion would come up during the budget thing, but
And it will.
strike it out. Yeah,
It just cut it
Yeah.
off.
okay.
States a fact, she's retiring early.
That resolves that question. Page 4, line 20, JM reminded that decisions are just based on enrollment related to the schools. It should say not just based on enrollment, because then we go on to say, you know, is there value in the building, et cetera. And then the final item was under documents. I think we need to reference whatever, Kathy, you called that letter that you've circulated before the meeting. I don't see that document. It's referenced in the minutes. It's not referenced down below.
This is the letter to the departments about what information we want.
Yeah, because we
Okay.
reference that there's a draft letter somewhere in the minutes up above, but then we don't actually have it under documents reviewed or received, which we had an email on it right before the meeting, right?
Okay, so just add that at the very end, Claire.
Will do.
Jason,
That's it for me.
Andrew, Tim, John, Judy.
Only thing for me is on the roll call votes, my name's misspelled. But
Oops,
all right.
sorry.
It happens a lot.
I'm good.
Mr. Mooney,
I'm good.
Judy?
I wasn't there.
Do you want to hear? Okay, so.
Yeah.
All right, so anyone wanting to make a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Jason moved. Second,
Second.
Andrew Pfaff seconded. Okay. All right, roll call vote. Judy?
Absent. Yes, I guess.
Judy's abstaining. Cook, aye. Dennington?
Aye.
Malinowski?
Aye.
Martell?
Aye.
Beth?
Aye.
Rooney?
Aye.
Okay, so 6-0-1. All right. Nice to be caught up. All right, chairman's update. I've got a few things. Let's start talking about other articles besides the budget articles, so what we call non-moneyed articles. So remember, we had 15 or so that were carried over from the original town meeting. So those are still going to be on this warrant article, unless someone decides to try to remove them, and no one expects that to happen at this point. There's not a lot of new ones being proposed yet. Still can be, but not yet. So we've got to go back and decide which ones we want to review again. There was a couple we never got to. So we've got to get those for the first time, but there's some that I think we have vetted. Now, everybody that is on advisory now was on last year except for Jason. So Jason, you can weigh in here as far as what you want to do to discuss any of them. For example, the mills tax. Do we want to go back and do that one again? So what does everyone want to do as far as the ones that we had vetted last year, had voted on? Do we want to go back and briefly discuss them? Do we want to do more of an in-depth? And I want Jason to weigh in here as far as the reasons we made the decisions we did, or do we want to not spend a long time at all on them? Andrew?
Just as a process point, I think last year what we did is we took this up after all the budget stuff.
We
right?
did.
After we, okay,
And that's still our intention, just so you know. So,
okay, yeah.
so we could be through the budget, I'm hoping middle of January is first, most of it. Then we'll turn our attention to these. So I agree.
I
that's
would
still,
like,
still the
I would
plan.
like to, sorry, we were talking at the same time. I would like to just give a little bit more thought to the planning board sponsored bylaw amendment about kind of redoing their own bylaw. I've had some additional thoughts on that. And then I'm glad you raised the meals tax issue, because on the one hand, you don't want to do anything that would hurt a restaurant during this terrible situation. On the other hand, the process that we went through before is very productive, and we still have this need. So, maybe one thing that could happen is the bylaw that was worked on before is recommended to be supported, but you just change it so that it becomes effective 1 year from now, or even 2 years from now.
That's definitely one way to do it.
It's
So
like,
as
let's
we
not
already
miss
call-
this opportunity.
I agree that this is, I think, more of a perception than an actual impact, but of course, no one suffered more than restaurants because of the pandemic, right? I mean, Southport's restaurants definitely have suffered and are continuing to suffer. So, at this point, we don't have to make a decision tonight. We'll keep talking about it. Once we get to February, we're going to know more about where COVID is going, about the vaccine, et cetera. We'll have a better idea of when we think we can, be back to more of a normal life, including restaurants being fully open. There's still no decision on town meeting. So this is just my personal opinion. I really do believe it will be postponed. So we may have more time to really consider this. So nothing to decide tonight, but I do want Jason to have a chance to say, I really do want to go back through them all. So Jason, you don't have to say tonight either. You can look at them and say, these are the ones I want you to really discuss again. You may not agree with the decision. So we do need to decide what we're going to do as far as re-reviewing the ones we did. And then certainly we got to get to the ones that we didn't.
Hey,
So
Kathy,
do I-
go ahead, Jason.
I was, sorry, John. Kathy, did you vote as advisory on all of the articles? Or did you hear presentations but not necessarily take a position on all of them?
We took a position on almost every one, Jason. There's a couple that we didn't get to. We didn't talk about the plastics ban. So there's a couple we didn't get to.
So
We did take a
what
position.
what I will do is I'll go back to your minutes for January, February, March of last year. I think there's only a few that I would want to have a discussion or weigh in on. And then I think I'm ready to vote on most of them. I think my largest item I wanted to hear more about was the CPC article related to the church. And I don't know if you had a presentation on it. That one, that's the one that sticks out in my mind as a potential conflict with some of the other projects that have been put forward from the town side this year.
That's probably the most controversial on the whole thing. That's true. We did have a presentation, so there was a lot of discussion about that one. So that one's probably worth, even if you didn't want to, it's probably still worth rediscussing.
Okay.
I understand
will-
the church tends to go forward with it. So.
All right. So I will send you a list of items, but I will try to make it short and sweet and do my own homework so that I'm just ready to vote on them again with the rest of you.
So here is the COVID update. So Andrew Pfaff has spent a lot of quality time taking a look at the actual law, the CARES Act, what it says, and then comparing that to how Massachusetts basically implemented the CARES Act. You know, Massachusetts was a conduit, right? It wasn't mass money. Massachusetts had to distribute it, though. So if you recall what I believe Jason said last week, Massachusetts decided that Southborough could get up to $896,000 from the CARES Act, and then FEMA, there was no limit on what we could apply for. So to date, there's been basically, so we'll start with CARES Act first. So there's basically been what they call 2 rounds of submissions that have been required. The second one was due October 30th. We submitted for October 30th. We did not ask for money in advance like some towns did. So we basically made a submission as to what we thought we qualified for at that point. So that's gone in. We will be able to do another submission that will include expenses through December 30th. So there's one more round to go in, but we haven't, as I think you've seen, we haven't asked for a lot of money yet. We've asked for basically $55,000 from the CARES Act.
We got 55,000. We
Got
asked for
$50,000.
Kathy, you mentioned that we can go back if there's an increase in the numbers. Can we go back and supplement substantively as to additional items as well?
It is my understanding that yes, that with this round 3, we're not just limited to everything that's been incurred since October 30th. That yes, we could go back and ask for things that we didn't ask for in either round 1, which was 0, and round 2.
Thank you.
But the point is, we have not asked for very much of what we would have been allocated if we had asked for it. FEMA is a little bit different. There's no specific amount that we've been allocated. So that's gone in separately. So we haven't asked for a whole lot compared to what we have seen other towns ask for. If you look at what they were allocated.
That was one of my questions. And Andrew, I don't know if you did that in terms of comparable towns, what they submitted. I assume it's all a public record, but where we would fall vis-a-vis on the graph of requests.
I looked and it wasn't that easy to find in terms of especially the detail of what it was, but I don't have any numbers. I think Jason, your community, you had some numbers for that. I don't know how that compares to what we had.
Yeah, they've been pretty public and had stuff in their packets from what I've seen. And I think it's higher based on my math than where Southborough's at.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether or not there are categories that, you know what, given the uniqueness of the situation, there may be categories that we could have or we didn't include, which we could. Again, speaking without seeing the document is difficult, but that was my concern last time, Kathy, about the substantive content and just making sure that we're getting what we're entitled to get.
I think, John, this is more of an art than a science. You know, the CARES Act was written really, really fast, right? And because of it, they had to keep clarifying and promulgating rules to basically explain how it was all going to work. So I can tell you that it is a fact that Carla McAuliffe has spent a lot of time trying to put this together. But it's one of those things that when you really start reading the CARES Act and you look at how Massachusetts has implemented this, you can see some differences in things that we may be able to, I don't want to say take advantage of, this is an honest exercise, but for example, and this is big picture, the Federal CARES Act basically does allow you to request reimbursement for budgeted expenses. Massachusetts says you're not supposed to request reimbursement for budget expenses. It's supposed to be for things that you spent outside your budget. However, the CARES Act rules and examples that they give you basically tell you that if there's a significant portion of someone's job description that's been changed, or they have been asked to do things that they normally wouldn't be required to do, you can absolutely ask for that to be reimbursed. And that's the part that I'm not sure we have done. The other thing is the people whose salaries could probably be reimbursed didn't do a necessarily great job of keeping track of their time. So we don't have, a Excel spreadsheet showing what people did. So this is still going to take more work. But Andrew and I both believe that there is more money on the table to get. I've told Brian Valentine to please, tell Carla that we are on her side. We're not trying to make anyone look bad here. We just want to make sure that we get as much as we can, because the difference between 100,000 and 800 is a lot of money to the town of Southborough.
Yeah, and I haven't gone through it, and maybe I should have, but one of the question I have is that there's certain departments, say for instance, the senior center, which some of its revenue was not secured because they could not run their programs. And I'm sure that that is something that can be quantified, at least on an average basis. And I don't know if that is a line item that you could submit, because I have to assume that, there are some departments that have had to cancel things and they were income generating things.
So John, I don't know the answer to that. It's a good question. The CARES Act, for the most part, focused on giving people money to pay expenses to keep them open.
That's right.
So I don't know that there is any ability to request reimbursement for lost revenue, because if you could, think of all the revenue that the state lost, for example, on sales tax, meals tax, things like that. So I'm skeptical that we can ask for lost revenue. I really do think the focus is almost solely on trying to reimburse you or give you money to pay expenses, so you don't close your business or have to lay off people. That's where a big focus of it was. But we're going to look. So it's going to take a little bit more time to truly get to the bottom of this and make sure we really have been creative in an honest way to all they can say is no, right? There's no downside to submitting expenses that may be a little bit gray as far as which category they come in. I pick up all the grays, pick up the whites and the grays. Andrew, anything you want to add to that? Andrew Pfaff?
I think that Carla mentioned on the selectmen last night that there's a possibility that maybe that's something they would change in the future for the revenue loss component, but certainly not in there today. I think it's just, as reading through some of the guidance from Treasury on the CARES Act from the federal level, which a lot of it came out even in October. So it would make sense that it might not have made it into the guidance from the state from May. But the question is whether or not, we include it, and, we've already paid the money. But I think certainly reading the CARES Act Treasury guidance, and especially for the public, police, fire, EMS, and Board of Health people that have, spending, majority of their time on these items, it seems like those, on the rule of what they wrote, it is reimbursable.
But you didn't say anything about reimbursable revenue, lost revenue.
It's not in the CARES Act now, but they were talking about, if there's money left over, whether or not they would include that, I think.
And there may be another package. Who knows? Everybody can read what's going on in the papers as far as trying to get another package from, the Dems want a really big package. The Senate Republicans don't want as big a package. So one would think they'll come up with something at some point when things settle down a little bit more. So you've got that to look to. But, the state is just the conduit. So it's not the state's money. The state already has the money available to disperse to the towns. So one would think that the people at the state that are looking at these requests might not scrub them to the degree they would if it was coming out of their own pocketbook. And maybe I'm wrong. Well, I guess we'll see. So to be continued, to be discussed, much more work to be done to really try to make sure that we have asked for everything that seems to be reasonably appropriate to ask for. Tim, any comment?
No, not really at this time.
Okay. All right. Technology. And so Jason, can you bring Tom in? Hi, Tom. There you are.
Hello, how are you?
Heard you had a rough day.
Yeah, it's a busy day.
Okay, so we'll talk about your budget next, but I just want you to be part of this discussion too. So the status of replacing Tom is the interviews, there are interviews underway. Everyone, I think, got John Butler's email last night, which was interesting. Everybody probably saw the technology committee chair's reply to it, which didn't seem to really address what John was trying to say, which is put everything on the cloud. So Tom, did you see John Butler's email?
Yes, I did.
It's up to you, but do you want to comment on it? Do you want to say anything?
So I will say that it is a difference of philosophy. That there's definitely some benefit both ways. I left it to MTC to have a decision or a discussion on strategy going forward with the next IT manager. I will say that my personal investigations into cloud for things that could be moved to the cloud is that you can run into operating expenses that get excessive. So, the idea of buying servers and storage is, one-time cost for, call it 5 to 7 years, and it's an investment that way, as opposed to renting the cloud infrastructure. So, again, it can go either way. I don't think you will ever find that you will be able to move everything to the cloud, and specifically public safety systems. Those need to be able to operate regardless of if all internet connections go down. Police and fire need to be able to record their dispatches and their records. So, like I said, there's discussion to be had around it. My belief and philosophy was that this was the solution to go forward for the next, again, 5 to 7 years, and things change so rapidly that by that time you may have moved more things to the cloud.
So Tom, is there anything else that you know for a fact couldn't be moved to the cloud besides public safety?
So we have things like our phone system, which, yes, it could be moved to the cloud, but will it operate the same way? I can't speak to that. There's definitely plans to move some things, to the cloud a little bit more as we go. But, right now that's, again, that's a long-term strategy to have a discussion about.
Andrew?
Yes. So how I kind of interpreted John Butler's email was that before spending $90,000 on new servers, we should at least give some thought to some of the issues that were proposed in his email, right? So there's the
Yep.
substantive issue about whether to do this or not do this. But could we just get some more information? And I don't know if it's something that's in the purview of capital that is there on in consideration for this upcoming town meeting, spending that much money on servers. And if there
Yeah.
is, sounds like it would be an opportunity to just take a pause and think about this before spending that money. And is it money that needs to be spent this year? Could it be moved over another year to give more time to think about this?
So
That-
I will say in my report to Capital, you are operating on some aging servers, servers that are out of warranty at this point. So there was a lot of talk last year and ongoing this year around IT risk. And yes, there is risk in maintaining servers that are on site as opposed to cloud. There is staff hours that go into maintaining those things. We all know that in municipal we're asked to do more with less, and there are some staffing requirements that we take on for that purpose. When we talked about the fiber, I kept going back to the example of buying a house as opposed to leasing an apartment. Yes, there's ongoing maintenance that you may have to pay for with owning a house, but you're also paying less in the long run. So again, the way it moves forward, I personally would recommend the strategy that I have laid out in my capital request. What MTC comes up with for a long-term strategic plan and what the next IT manager believes is the way forward. That's a discussion to be had. And the other piece is that, to Kathy's point, if we have town meeting in March, we're still, 6 months away? That's 6 months of discussion to still be had.
So Andrew, that's what prompted John's email. He saw that we've got $90,000 of servers on the capital budget for fiscal year 22. So that's what he said, this is kind of an ideal time with the changeover from Tom to his successor to rethink the whole thing. So I'll just give you my personal experience. My firm is totally on the cloud and we really, really like it, other than it's a little bit slower. So there's a little bit of drum in your fingers. So everything's there, but we've got, so Tom, I think we save money. We've got a fixed cost with our outside IT firm. We have no one internal, it's all outside. And it's a fixed cost and works well so far. Andrew Dennington's law firm recently did the same thing after their server burnt in their basement.
But it didn't burn. It didn't burn.
But they had a fire.
There was a fire in the basement. We were on the fourth floor, and I don't remembering all the details, but it was just a story that illustrated that these are real risks of physical harm and things that can disrupt your business.
All right, so I think enough of that, and it's not our primary decision here. We should just definitely keep track of it and make sure that we have some input into given the risk that we identified last year. All right, so Tom, given that you want to go into your budget, I've got your budget on my screen. I'm not sure what you've got on yours, what you want to do. And for the record, this is not to vote on his budget. This is just to give Tom a chance to let us know anything we should know about his budget. I'm sure it's going to change before it actually gets finalized.
And Tom, I just want to say, great use of the itemized breakdowns and comment fields. It was really well done in ClearGov.
Thank you. So I think the big thing to highlight is that the two big drivers, when you look at the overall budget increase, it's over 8% year over year. The two big drivers on that are ClearGov at 24,000, and then Zoom and DocuSign for another 3,100. If you remove those two items, we're at, I think, 0.5% increase. So, basically came in as lean as possible with adding those two things that are kind of required this year. Another thing just to kind of put out there, a big increase line, if you see the detail, is under the computer services. I don't remember if I have it listed in ClearGov as Exchange Online or Office licensing. I think I would have put it as Office licensing. And that's a 51% increase, excuse me. But that's because I took that number out of the computer replacement. It used to all be in that computer replacement line. And now the workstation replacement is just hardware.
Okay, so everybody, we've got to get used to using the software. And it's a lot different than what we're used to. We're not going to be shown spreadsheets. We're going to download this into a spreadsheet for us to use to keep track of the overall budget. But everybody's got to kind of practice with this. And once you get used to it, you'll like it, I think. But we're going to have to decide with remote meetings how we're going to do these presentations. So this is kind of our guinea pig night. There's lots of sub worksheets you can look at. Their salary spreadsheet is separate. So I don't know what people want to do. We can share screens and show these one at a time, but you'll have to look at this ahead of time to make sure you know what your questions are, etc. So Andrew Pfaff, what do you want to do as far as our future departments to look at this?
Do you want to put the ClearGov up on the screen?
Yeah, we can do that, but it's still hard to. I think we're so used to having budget in front of us and on the screen that it's going to take a little get used to do this. So we can do that. We can put it so that people can see what we're talking about. But everybody's going to still have to look at this ahead of time. Log in and look at it, and make sure you know what your questions are. What things don't make sense. The liaison can certainly start off the presentation, explain some things, but this is going to take a little getting used to make sure everybody's got a chance to really understand what's going on here. So Tom, the ClearGov is $24,000 a year, and that includes the capital budget module.
That's correct. That's correct. And that was the budget portion was paid with the grant this year.
Yeah,
So
that's the year over year. Yeah.
The large increase, right?
All right. So without that, and what was your other change? What was the other software?
So Zoom licensing and DocuSign. So that's about 3,100. So without those two, we're at, I believe it's a 0.5% increase year over year.
And the Zoom we expensed that under CARES for this year, right?
I believe that it was taken out for that, yes.
Okay.
But there's kind of an assumption that there'll be some kind of Zoom component going forward for visibility, basically, for committees. I think the public has kind of liked being able to check in on more meetings here and there.
It's only $1,100. It's not bad, and then the DocuSign is $2,000. So it really is all ClearGov.
Is Kathy, from a comparative standpoint, I had gone in and looked at it, but I obviously didn't have access to 21 because it's not in here. And this isn't on Tom. This is more a question for Brian. Is like, how can we need a comparative for all departments, right? This has nothing to do just with IT. We can see in total what these line items were, but I think we should make a threshold for Brian of, like, for example, Tom was very clear with his description, but like, is there a threshold if a budget line item went up X% or went down X%? Like, Brian should upload this kind of itemized detail that Andrew applauded, at the beginning, because I think that's helpful to see, because we're going to come back to this budget 3 months from now and have a question of some sort, I'm sure. Like, and most likely one of us will remember, but I think it's just creates a nice track record so you can see year over year, right? We're not gonna be able to control what Zoom does with their fees, right? But it's gonna be a decision of, do we keep it or do we not? And are we getting our bang for our buck, right? Like, I think that one's an easy one, but just to be able to kind of see what's driving that year over year for comparative purposes.
Okay, so let's talk about what you just said as far as not being able to compare. So if you go to the screen, okay, now I do want to share this. We can start choosing share. Can everybody see that now? Does everybody have a ClearGov screen on that they can see?
Yes.
All right, so if you take a look, can you follow my cursor? See my cursor there moving? Somebody say yes, please.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so there, you can see that that line item is up 30.99% from the previous year. So Jason, what do you mean that you
So
can't?
go to the right and click on that green icon.
So there is where you're saying you can't see the comparison.
No, so keep going to the right.
No, I agree that there you're not going to see it, but here you can.
Yeah. So if I'm
Okay, so
someone
here,
in the public that's looking at this going into town meeting, yeah, right. So click that just so everyone can see it, because I'm not, obviously I don't know, right? So like, this is a great level of detail, right? And without Tom's verbal explanation, we would have had no idea what was driving the difference.
Right, and I think next year it will. So you see, you have a tab for 2021.
Yeah.
I think next year the 2022 data will pull into there, but because of the way our budgets are in the financial system, there wasn't that detail that was broken down.
How hard will it be to do an import for 2021? I mean,
That's not an import. That's a manual entry, because that's a breakdown that is not accounted for in the financial system.
you can't do a CSV import for a previous year.
Doesn't have
Not
any-
everyone has it in the same format. It's, so I take that in that case, the computer equipment repair maintenance account, and I break that down further into detail. But it's not something we don't track it to that level within Vadar, the financial management system.
okay, so Tom, you're telling me
Yes.
that, so you input these four numbers, correct?
Yes.
Into ClearGov. Okay, and you could not have gone to 2021 and done the same thing?
I don't believe so, because we don't have edit capabilities on, like, as a department, I don't have edit capabilities on the finalized budget for 2021.
So we have a ClearGov rep, and I know this from trying to get capital lined up.
Yep.
We've been able to upload many different iterations of our own created sort of spreadsheet. So Kathy, I think the to-do here is, if it's manual, then I think we need to ask Brian for specific ones to be uploaded, like ones that are 30% jumping, right? Like this one is a clear example of one that if you just added 6 or 8 more lines and someone did it manually and spent, a few hours doing this for a few line items, you'd have a lot more transparency and visibility to what's driving these sorts of discussions for everyone.
On this one, I don't think it doesn't seem to work real well, because even if you had the 2021 numbers there, you'd have to toggle back and forth to try to figure out the difference. So maybe, at least for now, the better way to do it is does everybody see the paper clips and understand what those are? So for example, that's how the salary detail was added. So you hit the paperclip and you'll see what people added. So you can always add a spreadsheet to what you submitted. So I am not sure what the better way to do it is, but I don't think putting the 2021 in here is going to help you a lot because it's still not going to, it's not side by side.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is I wouldn't jump to that conclusion without asking the question, because what we have found on the capital side is that there are a lot of either A, bugs that they're working out, or two, user enhancements that a community asked the question like this very one. And they're like, oh, we'll build that and it'll just be in the next release. And they do these sprints that are 4 to 6 weeks. So yeah, maybe it won't be there tomorrow. But I think what we should do is, assuming everyone's on board with that sort of comparison, we should track these items. And Brian has a really good relationship with the ClearGov tech support reps. And they're really good with doing the things that Tim's talking about taking a data set and uploading it. There's a ton of features so that someone like Tom on the town side doesn't have to think through what software to upload, can you upload, or do I have to manually enter it? So I just think we should track these things, and 5 may get shot down, 5 may be, but that's how we're actually going to get our bang for the buck for this budget increase in this particular one, because we're going to be able to suggest enhancements that other communities maybe haven't brought forward, and it doesn't cost you anything to do those enhancements if they like the idea.
So it looks like we've got 2 questions. Can we, for this budget year, do something to get subline item detail for fiscal year 21 side by side with 22 so we can see the differences? That to me is the first question. The second is, if that is not available, do we know that for next year we are going to be able to see 21 against, or 22 against 23 because it's got the 22 detail in there like this? Does everybody agree that's our 2 questions so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think the 22 should carry over to Tom's point. I think the issue that Tom was trying to raise is that data doesn't exist at a sub general ledger level of detail. There's no sub entry budget uploaded in any system. He has it in an Excel spreadsheet. So you can't just export it out of a database and load it in to a notes field or to a detailed line item field. You'd have to have the budget reopened for 2021, and you'd have to have people go in and key it in at an item level detail, and then make sure that the total matches exactly to what the budget was, because it has to be locked in.
All right, I don't want to spend more time we need, but we got to get this right. So Tom, is Andrew just said you basically are tracking this on a spreadsheet?
Yeah, so, basically, I have the budget sheet that I used last year, and we added the column to it as I was preparing for the budget. And then when ClearGov was ready, opened that up, and I went back and forth from spreadsheet to ClearGov. So, does the data exist? Probably. In my case, yes. Is it in the same format across all departments? Probably not.
Well, clearly the general ledger account for this is, what you've got above here. So this whole thing is general. So Andrew's right. The detail's not in our general ledger. It's in your spreadsheet. And I don't know if anybody else went this much into detail. I didn't see a whole lot of people that have used the subline item detail like you have. I think most people basically submitted spreadsheets to supplement what they did.
But that's the point, Kathy. Like, I think if we find this valuable, right? And obviously Tom's more familiar with it than most department heads, is just a guess here. If we like that level of detail, we need to be communicating that with the other communications you're sending out.
What's not to like about this level of detail?
I personally love it, but I'm just saying, this goes to the liaison discussion, or having kind of one of us help guide from an advisory perspective the ClearGov aspects of this, because I can just tell you it's been very collaborative on the capital side with Brian in working through trying to get that thing right so that we have the right level of detail of what we think people are going to want, and then adapting to user feedback.
Okay, but just to be clear, as far as what I think our 2 questions are, we'll move on, is that right now, is there any way to see 2021 as subline item detail and show it in a way that we can easily compare ourselves.
Kathy, there might be a third question, if I may, and it's more a process question. I like to try to prepare as much as I can before these meetings so that so I phrase out my questions appropriately. And you mentioned about 20 minutes ago that it'll be important for us to go through this ClearGov website to identify areas that may require discussion. Jason, I'll ask you this. Is there a basic tutorial for someone like me, i.e. Who struggles with change and especially these applications, that I could go to so that I can in fact be prepared, as Kathy mentioned earlier? And maybe I'm alone in this, and if I am, I will certainly learn it. But I just wanted to put that out there, Kathy, because you asked, what should we really have in front of us and what are we going to talk about at the meetings?
You're not going to be alone, John.
Absolutely not.
I believe there is a video that Brian Ballantyne has. Kathy, I don't know. I haven't seen it, but that might be something worth asking because I know they did do one training. I didn't go to that one, but I do know that I think we were invited.
Yeah, they did do a training and we recorded. It was pretty good. But yeah.
But if we go back to what we've done for years, which is basically have a big, Excel workbook we work with, and then have each department come in with, their salary spreadsheets and their own spreadsheet that shows, current year, proposed, last year, previous year, then we're kind of defeating the purpose of using this. We got to try to see if we can get everybody comfortable with this. And I'm happy to work with anybody that doesn't do this, all day long. There's probably a couple of us that are used to doing this, and there's probably a couple that aren't. So I'm happy to make sure that, and I will say this, if you can just spend, I'd say a good hour, I think you can get the basics down as far as how it works. You basically just need to learn how to go across the screen. So John, I'm happy to make sure that you and anybody else that thinks they need some more help to get used to this, because the plan was that, before a department comes in, everybody advisory is going to take a look at that budget on their own by logging into ClearGov and looking at it, make a list of their questions and be ready to ask them. We can share the screen when they come in, but we weren't going to hand out, paper spreadsheets like we have in the past.
I would definitely
Will schools
accept.
be on ClearGov too?
Say that again, Andrew.
Will the schools be on ClearGov?
Their budget will be in here. They have their own separate budget software. So I don't know the answer to that as far as whether they're going to also try to, my guess is they're not planning on it, but I don't know the answer to that. So
They said
Andrew,
yes at that meeting, Kathy, we had.
they said they're going to input into ClearGov on top
Yes.
of okay.
Yeah, and they're actually looking to go to ClearGov on the school side. Remember Greg said that at
No,
the,
But I believe you. So that's good. So
and Kathy, if you have a quorum of members that would like just a tutorial, we could just do a working session as part of a meeting and just say, for those of us that have gotten comfortable with it, just say, here's what we're doing. These are the best practices. I mean, it doesn't hurt because then this is obviously also going to be open to the public to see.
So anybody have an issue with that? So we will get you the video first, let you take a crack at that. And then if you want to go further with a, it's called a group session, we'll do that too. And we can start with an easy budget. We'll start with, the first couple that we're going to look at on the second, EDC and Youth and Family Services. Those are fairly easy budgets to look at. There's not much there. So I'm waiting for somebody to tell me that's what they want to do.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kathy, I absolutely sign me up for that
All right,
process.
John. All right, we'll get everybody there. All right, but it is kind of neat to be able to do this and not have to go back and wonder if you've got the right budget or not. So now, one question that has not been answered yet, but Brian Ballantyne is working on it, is to understand how we keep track of changes. So as we know that the budgets that we look at and review change sometimes between there and town meeting. And sometimes we don't know about it and we're surprised. So he is talking to ClearGov about a way to make sure that any changes always get flagged. We don't have to go hunting for them. So right now, I don't know what the answer to that is. Okay. So I'm going to close this unless anybody wants to continue looking at this one. Okay. And go back to Tom's overall budget, which basically is not finalized because we don't have his replacement. We don't know what the salary is, et cetera. So we're going to revisit this budget, but I just wanted to make sure he had a chance to let us know what we should know before he's not here to tell us anymore.
Kathy, I have a question for Tom, if that's okay.
Go ahead, Jason.
So Tom, like that, the line item detail that we just focused a lot on, I noticed what caught my attention was there was something for police scheduling in there. But
Yes.
then when I've looked at other departments thus far, there's IT related expenses in there too. So
Yeah,
what
so-
is the town's policy of how you bifurcate what ends up in your budget versus what ends up in a department's budget related to software and hardware?
Yeah, so there really isn't a true policy at this time. You know, I've been trying as things come up to kind of pull them into the technology budget. There is certainly some departments that still have applications. For example, the assessors have an application that they pay for that is truly just theirs. You know, at some point, it would probably make sense to bring that under the technology budget so you have a true representation of the technology spend for the town. So the ones that I can think of off the top of my head are assessors. Fire has some software that they pay for. And in part they pay for it, they maintain it. So I haven't had to touch that at all. So that's kind of one of the factors. The police scheduling ended up in my budget because we're having some discussions, and it was around budget time last year. And I said, well, all right, why don't I include that in my budget? With that eye towards putting more and more towards the technology budget.
So it's all software, all equipment's in your budget, correct? Or capital?
I would say 90%. The library does their own equipment right now. And then equipment that goes into emergency apparatus. So the cruisers, the computers in the cruisers and the devices on the fire trucks and ambulances, those are paid out of the departments as well.
Those aren't small numbers, just for everyone's benefit. That's what generated my question.
Yeah.
I don't know what the right answer is, but I just want everyone to be aware there's IT spend elsewhere.
So Jason, I don't know what line item you were actually talking about.
Whatever one you had up.
I've got the 4 back up. I'm not sure. Am I
Yeah.
seeing
Yeah, so
You are. So go down a little bit, Kathy.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Okay,
like,
so-
you know, I think to Jason's point, you see like ClearGov, should that be in Brian's budget? You see the permitting system, should that be in Lori's? Clear, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so
They're real
the permitting
centralized.
system, sorry, the difference on the permitting system is that is available for multiple departments. So fire does use that minimally right now as well. So to say it belongs in one department's budget does not make sense. So, you know, same thing probably for the, you know, the financial management is under technology because it's enterprise wide. So again, there's no right answer except if you want to have a true representation of what the IT spend is. I will say my experience in municipal is, you know, kind of taking that money away from departments. It can be a little bit of political pull, but you know, that's what you guys get paid the big bucks to deal with.
Yeah. So Kathy, I think that goes in with the same conversation of putting the, you know, utilities costs into some of the other budgets. I think it's either, you know, is stuff centrally managed or is it, you know, distributed in a cost allocation fashion so that you have it, you know, split out between the different departments as opposed to the support areas.
There's many examples of that, Andrew.
Yeah, so that's essentially the question, Kathy, is I think advisory should weigh in on how to standardize it moving forward and come up with one position as opposed to, it came up when I was reviewing the police budget. For example, they got $20,000 of computer hardware in there. Tom just cited it too. But then one department has water, one doesn't, one has electricity, one doesn't. They're splitting costs for, like, for example, maintenance of security systems, cameras and stuff like that. It just, when we think about the policy the BOS put in place in terms of line items, I think this is going to be more important to monitor.
Yeah, the other thing that I just remembered about the computer systems at police in particular, so they had an expense this year to replace the fingerprint machine. That has absolutely nothing to do with town IT, doesn't even touch our network really. Yes, it's plugged into our wiring, but that's not something that a town IT person should even be turning on and off, quite honestly. That's a specialized system that should maintain security and whatnot. So
right.
that's the type of stuff they may have some more information on. But
All right, so I think enough on this for tonight. So Tom, this is probably the last time we're going to see you. Any words of wisdom, anything else you want us to know before you?
no, I do plan on scheduling some time with whoever they hire as a replacement to be able to kind of walk them through some of these things as well. So there'll be some knowledge transfer at some point. So that is in the works, even though there is not a person identified yet. So.
Hey, Tom, as I mentioned in my note to you, thank you and congratulations on your new position.
Thank you.
So Tom, you've been a true professional to work with. I say that from my perspective all the way through. We've thrown some things at you and you've handled them with equanimity and grace, and we have certainly come to depend on you. Definitely got us through COVID. Anybody else?
Well, got you at least halfway through. So we'll see about the how far it goes.
All right. So thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so Jason, do you move Tom back out?
I'm in the process of doing that. Yep.
Okay, the next one, we're going to talk about the advisory bylaw. I will pop it up here.
Well, Kathy, before we move off of that topic, so I know we got the benefit here of Tom's comment on the IT budget, and so you said we're gonna revisit this later. The
Yeah,
IT budget.
I know what salaries are going to look like. Who knows
Okay.
what person's going to be more or less than Tom? Who knows when he's going to start? So there, I just, you got to get that settled. And what if we decide to go to the cloud? What's that going to cost? So there's a lot to be decided to finalize that budget, I think.
And also remember, they're talking about consolidating with the school. So it could go the other way too.
So just looking at the bottom line number, right? This was an 8%, a little over 8% increase. Would you say don't even worry about that number now because it's going to potentially change so much later?
Well, the reason it's high is only because of the ClearGov software, the annual cost of it.
Okay.
So we're going to pay
Okay.
this every year. This is what it costs. It's one of the, once you didn't buy the software, you basically are licensing the software. So that was in his budget last year. It was in there for $15,000, if I recall. And then he ended up with a grant that we didn't know about, so it came out of his budget. So that's why it's gone up, is because it's 0 for fiscal year 21 and it's 24 for fiscal year 22. We've also added on the capital budget module, which is why it's more than what we thought it was going to be last year. So that's in a nutshell. The other piece of it's peanuts. It's adding Zoom and adding DocuSign. So it's still maybe if the new person's salary is exactly what Tom's is, and we don't change anything, and he starts the day after Tom's salary cuts off, then this may be what gets proposed. But I doubt if that's going to be the case, if it's a little bit too perfect. Did everyone catch what Jason just said about schools? So I wasn't going to mention because I didn't know how public that was, but sounds like Jason.
It said it in the BOS meeting last night.
Well, I didn't hear all the BOS meeting. I do something else. So Mark is talking to the schools. The schools have 2 full-time technology people. So he's talking to the schools as to whether now it's time to start talking about sharing resources with the town and having one IT department for everything. He expects to hear back from the schools early in the week. And then he'll know, at least whether they've said, yes, they've got some appetite for it, or just no. We used to share years ago, and then we didn't. So this is not something we hadn't done in the past. We just haven't done it in a long time. So that may be an option too. And the last thing I'm going to say about that is I thought that the response to John Butler's email from Matthew was not a response. I don't know what it just didn't seem like he dealt with the issue John was really trying to get to, which is let's use the cloud. So we will see where this goes. All right, let's talk about something that we can absolutely deal with. All right, so I'm going to share, I'm still sharing screens. Can everybody see the advisory bylaw, section 9?
No, still
Nope.
the YourGov.
Is it up?
Should be now.
Yeah.
Yeah, there it
Everybody
is.
see it now? Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so there are 3 things to consider as far as whether we want to propose that the Board of Selectmen sponsor an amendment to the advisory bylaw. So let me just get the easy one out of the way. If we're going to propose changes, I think we should change section 912 and say we're going to have a vice chair. We've looked at a vice chair for many years. You guys heard me say this. We did it because there was a time where advisor would sit there and go, will you be chair? No. Will you be chair? No. Well, if you'll do it this year, I'll do it next year. Nobody wanted to be chair. And so one year, I believe it was John Wood said, well, I'll do it if you'll do a vice chair. So the vice chair can step up and run meetings when the chair's not there. So we said, fine, if you'll be chair, we'll do a vice chair. So here we go. This is, probably silly, but I just don't want somebody to come back and say, well, you don't have a vice chair. So who is this person? So if we're going to amend this, I don't know why we wouldn't go ahead and add a vice chair to section 912.
Sounds logical.
Agreed.
Anybody disagree?
No.
Okay, I'm going on then. So that one. Okay, the next 2 are more substantive. We've talked about the first one I'm going to talk about, which is possibly trying to reduce the number of members of the advisory committee from 9 to 7. As you know, we've got 7 right now. We've had 7 for almost 2 years. We do not have a long line of people, qualified people, asking to be on advisory. I personally, I've been on advisory the longest. I think 7 works much better than 9. When you've got 9, Judy, you can chime in here. People missed a lot of meetings because they knew there's 9 people, there's 20 people. So you had a lot of people who, it wasn't the same person. People would just miss meetings and not think much about it. This committee, since we've had 7, hardly anyone ever misses a meeting. We're all here. So everybody gets to participate in everything. So I just think 9 is unwieldy. I think 7 is much more practical and works better. I have talked about all these changes with Marty Healy. I'm going to tell you what he said in a second. I don't want to influence anybody's opinion here. So let's start with that one. Anyone want to chime in on 9 versus 7?
I like the fact that lowering it to 7 lowers the quorum requirement.
Yeah, but it makes it harder sometimes to get the quorum.
Well, I mean, if you only need 4 people, I mean, usually on any board I've seen, there's at least a core of people who show up to every single meeting. So
Your pool is smaller.
your pool is smaller, but again, you usually have grades in terms of participation. Some people show up 100% of the time.
Right.
Some people show up 50% of the time. So generally speaking, if you only need to find 4 people, you're pretty much guaranteed to get it.
Kathy, I am in favor of the concept of going from 9 to 7. And part of the reason is that that section right below it, 9-9, filling of vacancies. Once we, if you change the bylaw so that it reflects what we're actually doing, then that 9-9 is no longer really in effect.
Well, the moderator is in violation of 9-9.
That's what I'm basically saying.
He's worried about it too. He really is very concerned that these vacancies have not been filled, and he's tried really hard to fill the vacancies with qualified people, and I think he's done a great job. So kudos to him. He hasn't just said anybody steps up, warm body, here you go. And that wasn't the case a few years ago, and we had some issues with some of the people that got appointed. So it certainly would let him sleep better. That much I can tell you for sure. Andrew Pfaff?
Yeah, I would agree. 7's a less, it's a better number for a meeting. Anything more than that is just, it gets unwieldy and people don't get their opinion across. It's tough to go around the horn and get everybody's thoughts when there's 9 people. I think 7 is just a better number.
So Judy, do I hear that you would like to stay with 9? Is that?
I thought 9 worked well, and it did take the pressure off if people couldn't come. So I'm fine with 7, if that's the group's preference.
Well, I think that's the point. It does take the pressure off. And so I don't necessarily want to take the pressure off. It really helps, as you guys know, when everybody's here. You keep up with it. It just really helps to have a consistent group looking at all the issues.
That's true.
So kudos to this group as far as attendance goes. I mean, it's been great. Where is Mr. Rooney? Can you guys say? I don't see John Rooney.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. There you are. Sorry, John. So, Mr. Rooney, you were quite experienced in this town. What do you think, given you came from a 3-person board of selectmen?
Yeah, I'd go with 7.
Not to influence you there.
Yeah.
Jason, have you weighed in?
I haven't. I have no issues with 7, but would offer a recommendation that we should at least reach out to the current moderator, but also former moderators that actually have had to interview us at some point to appoint us to this board to just get their opinion and just see if there's any alternative arguments we should be thinking about, given that none of us have ever been appointed anyone, so to say, to this committee. And just want to understand their thinking. I think we all kind of know where Mr. Semino stands based on the fact we do have 2 vacancies right now. But I think there are former moderators in town still that obviously could provide maybe some perspective that we should consider. But right now, I would definitely be in favor of 7.
So Jason, I saved you for last because the committee that John, Jason, and I were on, the Public Safety Building Committee, had 9 on it. And I thought that was too many.
It was.
We didn't need 9. Clearly we didn't need 9. So that was an example. The only example I've been involved in that had 9 besides advisory, and I really thought it was too many.
It was too many, but you had such a dedicated group.
It was a great group.
You didn't have the attendance issue that we were just talking about, right? Because of how invested everyone was in that project. But as someone that was chairing the meeting, it was very hard to make sure that everyone got the right amount of airtime. And obviously, when you hear 9 different opinions on one topic, it can take a long time just to get through one topic. So I think there is a balance there, and it was very tough.
So as far as reaching out to the 2 past moderators, there's only 2. Now that John Wilson's not here, John Wilson would have been a great resource here, but he's not. The other two, especially Steve, was very short-lived.
Mhm.
I'm not sure they'd add a whole lot to this discussion. I don't mind doing it, but I don't know that they'd add a whole lot to this. I do know Paul Semino is fine with this.
Well, that's where I would start, given that he's at least the current person making appointments. So I just didn't know if you had had that conversation yet or not.
I have with Paul for sure. Now, so this is what this is. I want to wait and see what everybody saw before I told you what Marty Healy saw. So I remember Marty was on advisory for many years. He was a chair for several years. He's all for this. He thinks it's, he goes, we've only got 5 on board selectmen. Why do you need 9 on advisory? Is his threshold. So he's fine with this now. He's only 1 out of 5. I don't know what the other 4 would think. Is Sam still in the, is he here?
Yes. Oh, he dropped. Looks like he
Can you
dropped
break-
out.
Can you bring him in for a minute?
He's gone.
He's gone? Okay, sorry. I don't want to speak for him. I think I know what he thinks, but I won't speak for him. All right, so Marty Healy is fine with this and willing to support this as he is adding the vice chair. Okay, so let's keep going. And then Judy, if we agree to this, can you do the editing as far as what
Yeah,
the minutes say and get it to them? Because Board of Selectmen, he said they will sponsor it too. Okay,
Yeah.
the last one is the more substantive one. And this actually started with Marty Healy. The Board of Selectmen really liked the Capital Planning Committee. And well, they should. It's done very good work. And they would like to see it turned into a permanent standing committee instead of the current ad hoc committee. 3 of the advisory members are on that committee. So if that were to happen and no change to this bylaw, then the 3 advisory members would have to resign from one or the other committee. And I don't think anybody really wants that. It makes sense that advisory has members on that committee. There's a lot of synergy between the 2 committees as far as what it's doing and what advisory's primary function is, the finance function. So Marty is in favor of changing the bylaw to basically allow an advisory committee member to be on one permanent committee, ad hoc or permanent. It doesn't matter. You can keep ad hoc in there, but it can be one or the other. It does not have to be ad hoc.
Say that again, Kathy.
So Judy, right now, advisory members can only be on one other committee besides advisory, and it's got to be a temporary committee, an ad hoc committee. This was added in 2008. Al Hamilton is claiming authorship of this. John Butler didn't remember why they did it. So both Butler and Hamilton were on advisory at the time that this was passed. The rationale of adding this appears to be to make sure that advisory committee members don't try to get themselves put on other committees in an effort to influence advisory with one of their pet committees. So they've got something they really like Judy likes the library, right? So she wants to be on the library board of trustees or committee because she really wants to influence advisories to that budget. So it was added, John said, in an effort to make sure that advisory was going to maintain their independence and be able to provide an overall recommendation to town with not any undue influence from a specific committee or a specific area that someone really favors. So that's why it's there. And I said, well, to me, the reason you put it there is because you don't want advisories to be spread too thin. You can only do so much and do it right. So if you don't want to see, one person being on advisory and 5 other committees, they won't be very effective. So I would think that's as much of a reason as anything else as far as limitedness to one committee. But the issue is, do we want to support amending the advisory bylaw to basically allow a advisory to be on one committee, and it doesn't matter whether it's permanent or ad hoc?
Well, I think I don't like the idea. I mean, that's too strong. I wouldn't favor that because I think people who want to be on a committee are sometimes rare. And
But we're not trying to stop it, Judy. We're trying to make it more broad. This is not restrictive. We're trying to make it so you can be on a permanent.
oh, good. Well, that's what I want to see happen.
So this is to allow you to be any committee, now you're still going to be appointed by whoever appoints that committee. So Board of Selectmen, moderator, whoever appoints it is still going to appoint you. Advisory still is going to vote for it. So we still have the ability to not approve it. So that check and balance is still there. But if the capital planning committee is converted to a standing permanent committee, then the 3 advisory committee members could still stay on it.
Good.
That's the practical impact of it. So,
Yeah.
All right. So I'm looking. So Judy. So John, Mr. Rennie, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm good with the change. You know what, I'm not really sure I understood the basis for its inclusion, but having the explanation, I don't see that there's any risk by just taking out the word ad hoc.
So John, before 2008 town meeting, this language wasn't in there at all. It got added.
Right.
And John and Al said it was added to allow people to be on one or the committee, but to limit, to make sure there was enough guardrails restrictions so that we didn't take it too far.
Yeah, I got that, Kathy, but I think all you have to do in terms of amendment is delete the words ad hoc.
Interesting, if you go back and look at the history, which Andrew Pfaff pulled for us, there was an amendment proposed at town meeting to change the language in that first paragraph so that it was appointed only, it was the only committees that advisors would be appointed to were those appointed by the Board of Selectmen, and that got voted down. So it's anyone who has appointing authority could put us on a committee. So moderator, Board of Selectmen, whoever else is, I'm not sure who else can appoint besides those 2, but whoever can could appoint us.
Planning board has definitely some appointments.
Yep, they do public works, a couple of people in there. So there's one. So anyway, okay, Andrew Dennington, what do you think?
Well, I'm getting a little bit lost in some of the wording here, but on the idea that we should make sure that advisory committee members can be on capital planning committee, I think that's important to make sure that we continue to allow that.
So I think we're proposing on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th sentence down where it says ad hoc, to get rid of ad hoc, to either say may belong to one committee, and then you could put parentheses ad hoc or permanent, or not bother to define it, but get the word ad hoc out of there as far as the adjective to in front of committee.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I was going through my mind, I don't know that matters at all, is there a difference between a committee and a board? You know, because, but I don't think it really, the only boards I can think of would be like the planning board, the zoning board of appeals. But the chances of a town moderator appointing someone that's on a member of those boards to the advisory committee, which might not be very, just that would spread a person too thin. That's so remote, I think, that it's not worth thinking about this too much about this committee versus board idea I was thinking of. So just getting back to what John Rooney was saying, yeah, I think that does make sense. If you just struck the word ad hoc, that would allow an advisory committee member to be a member of another committee as long as the advisory committee approved it, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, no, I think I'm fully supportive of people joining committees. I think to Andrew's point, I think the kind of the language of it, boards and committees, because that's what we classify it as in the listing, would be a good change.
And remember, there's 2 guardrails. You got to get appointed first by Board of Selectmen, probably. So they're not going to appoint you unless they think you should do it. They're going to have looked at you, right? So they're all for it. And then advisory's got to approve it with a majority vote. So it's not automatic. You got to get through 2 hoops here.
And then the other question, Andrew, from a legal perspective, I was reading this earlier, and the may belong to one ad hoc committee that is appointed by an elected board or official, or one other committee appointed by the moderator. Does that other committee in this language, if you're reading this as attorney, is it the ad hoc only applies to the elected or official, or does it also apply to them appointed by the moderator?
I don't know. And part of that, I have not ever thought about this before, and it's probably
You know, like if we created a
but
committee that
it's-
was appointed by the moderator, would then it be okay? I don't know. It just was worded funny. I
It
think
doesn't, it doesn't make sense if you keep that there. If you say may belong to one committee that is appointed by that, or one other committee appointed by the moderator. That doesn't make sense. So a moderator is an elected official, right?
Yeah.
Or is an
It's not an
official.
elected board. I guess official. Well, yeah. So it's just a funny statement. So I think we just need to rework
Well,
it.
was that, I'm just throwing this out there. The way I read that, and I'm not an attorney, is this saying that the current moderator could appoint one of us to advisory and personnel board?
Yeah, I think that's what it's saying, Jason, but it's really sloppy, loose.
Or Public Works Planning Board, or
I don't
Yeah.
think it really means that. I mean, who cares? I mean, so moderator has 3 appointments, right? So I don't think we need that anymore. Why don't we just put a period after that is appointed by an elected board or official? That's going to include the moderator.
I would agree with that.
or that's appointed by whatever the committee or the appointing body.
Keep it easy. Put the period there. What's wrong with the period there? Judy, are you making notes here as far as what you're going to do?
Not really.
Better start.
Yeah.
Okay. Or you go
Well,
back
it's
and look.
recorded.
That's right. Beauty of Zoom, right? You can look
Yeah,
at it.
I'll-
Okay, so we're going to get rid of ad hoc. We're going to put a period after elected board or official. And strike the rest of it.
Kathy, one thing I think we need to be prepared for, right, is depending upon what's going on in town, what committee or board or committee is hot, which we're not going to know until we get closer to town meeting, is, what concerns people may raise in is there going to be a lack of trust in the people that are making the appointments? I think what we need to do is have a fallback plan. Because I think this all started because of capital planning, right? And assuming capital planning has a separate warrant article and becomes a permanent committee, I think regardless of the fact that some of us are on it now, I haven't heard any resistance in any conversation that I've been part of in this town that basically capital planning almost could be a subcommittee of advisory, right? And I think may have been at some point in time.
I agree. So that's a thought. We
Yeah.
could always do that.
So I guess what I was going to suggest is we should be ready, especially if this meets resistance at any point in time based on public feedback or when BOS is vetting it in their level of support, that there is an alternative that if people aren't supportive of striking the word ad hoc, that you just have bullet point C here that says the capital planning committee should not be considered for any of the above. However, in no one point in time should advisory members hold a quorum on that committee, i.e. there couldn't be more than 3 on the 7-person committee. That way you still create the independence that I think this is looking for, in that advisory, that the remaining, let's just say you had 7 advisory members at that point, they could theoretically vote very differently than the members that were on capital planning and still create that independent thought and recommendation to town meeting.
I don't think we should go that far. I am confident this will pass because you'll have advisory members get up there like Al Hamilton and John Butler, and they will be convincing. I think that's too confusing, Jason. I'm trying to keep this easy. So we just say boom, boom, boom. But I'll come back to that, but so this is what we've got to do. So that's appointed by an elected board official under the following restrictions. Now, look at B. So Marty and I talked about this one too. B makes no sense to me whatsoever. Why the people on the other committee, when whatever their topic is, they come to advisory, then the advisory members who are on both committees have to sit there and can vote. So then you start, you could run into a quorum problem. We've got 3 out of 7 on this committee. So I would propose striking B completely. I just don't think it's necessary.
I agreed with that, because then doesn't that pose issues about when the advisory committee discusses matters subject to the jurisdiction of the capital planning committee, which would be
That's exactly what it means.
pretty
So
frequently.
So if we ever talk about
I don't
anything
want-
having to do with capital and advisory, we don't have quorum?
well, we
No,
would
the
have
other 4 members have to be here, Andrew, is what I mean.
to be there, and we would have to zip our lips.
No, but I'm saying as of right now, we have a quorum of more.
Except we're a 9-member board right now.
Exactly. So as of right now, anytime we mention the word capital, we don't have quorum.
I think all this is just a point to why B should be, there's a good case to remove B, right?
Just as we can't vote, I think what we would need to do is, at least under the current regulations, understand from the clerk, can you have a vote of 4-0-3 or 3-1-3 or 0-4-3 or whatever how permutation comes out.
So that's my point. Let's get rid of
It
that.
says-
But I agree. I think we're all saying it's confusing, but I think the intent there was to create some sort of independence so that you couldn't sway two boards or committees. Is my guess is what the intent was. Whether that's appropriate, I think is a matter that needs to be
Jason, the purpose of being on the committee is to help inform advisory.
That's what I'm saying is it's completely, so let me give an example, Kathy, is those things go so lockstep and hip, but maybe let me pick the Recreation Commission, right? If we change the language here and someone goes off and becomes a member of the Recreation Commission, which is appointed by the BOS, right? And then all of a sudden that becomes a creeping acquisition, is there a way to advance recreation specific items through advisory? I think that's what you said the intent was. So I think we need to balance that and make sure we understand where people sit other than just the prior advisory members, as we vet this through, the public forums that would lead up to town meeting.
They just don't expect there to be an issue with the other committee members coming back to advisory, helping advisory understand what that committee has done, basically inform them, and then voting on whatever advisory has in front of them to vote for. If we've got someone that goes off the rails, is on the rec commission, well, there's really a committee, but let's pretend it's a committee, they're on rec commission, and they really decide they want to build 10 fields in this town, and that's what they're going to push for. And they come back to advisory and start pushing for that, it's going to be obvious.
I don't disagree with that part.
I think you could remove or be counted for purposes of a quorum fairly easily. In regards to that clause, I'm thinking more in terms of transfers from the reserve fund. I think that needs to be very neutral.
But Tim, you're on a committee, you're not part of a department. And so committees generally don't ask for reserve fund transfers. So I can't come up with an example of where the committee you're on is asking for a reserve fund transfer that you've also got to vote on.
True, but there's reality and then there's perception, right? And it's important that advisory maintain the perception of transparency and neutrality. So I think that clause B speaks to that. I do think that there's a problem with the quorum clause.
So we end up with a vote that is someone's absent. I want to go back to something someone says. Who thinks our quorum is 5 and who thinks it's 4 right now?
It's 5.
5.
I thought we settled that with Jim Haggerty and it's actually 4.
If we have a 9-person board,
Absolutely.
then our
fine.
quorum is 5.
Sam's still not in the audience. We went back and looked at this and I thought we concluded, this was advisory a couple years ago that it really was, because we actually had this issue, that it was actually 4, that we were not reading this correctly and Jim Haggerty supported us. All right,
Because we don't have 9 people seated in the
That's right.
position.
That's right. So it's an amount seated instead of what we see here. But we're going to take care of this anyway with this. We're going to go to 7. So it's a short-term problem. So let's say we have 7.
So,
2
I mean, Kathy, bear in mind that CHOP-C couldn't meet because they didn't meet the quorum requirement, because they couldn't get people to join that board. The quorum requirements are fixed based upon the size of the board, not the appointees.
Judy's the only one that was on advisory when this came up. All right.
I know CPC had the same problem, Kathy. There was a point in time where we only had 6 people sitting, And we still had a requirement, a quorum requirement of 5, and it was really difficult. Part of the reason why I'm so in favor of lowering from 9 to 7 for advisory.
Okay, so we know the quorum would be 4 at that point, no matter what. I mean, 4, it would be 4. So let's say we have a meeting, 2 people aren't there, and 3 of 5 are on capital planning. And we need to vote on something. The vote would be, we'd have 2 people voting.
That's right. It would be 203.
So therefore, you might not be able to pass what you're trying to pass because you don't have a majority vote.
That's right. The majority vote, it kind of sort of gets to what John lived with the 3-person board of selectmen. So whenever Dan couldn't show up, it had to be unanimous in order to pass. It's a challenge.
All right, does everybody agree to at least delete the counted for purposes of quorum, that we're all in agreement with that piece of it?
As I think more and more about it, I really think that getting rid of the entire provision makes the most sense, because the idea, like, we're all smart and we know that if someone is advocating for something that's, within the jurisdiction of a committee that they're on, people know to kind of take that with a grain of salt. It doesn't mean they shouldn't be able to vote on it.
I agree with Andrew. I mean, the reality is that, by way of illustration, if Jason votes for something on the capital planning committee, and then he comes to advisory and votes for it as well, I don't see a problem with that at all. I mean, there's transparency, he's being objective, and there's no reason why we would prohibit him from voting. In fact, he probably has more information and more intelligence on those topics. I would take out the entire B.
So here's an example. And this is actually a real example that Jason might be surprised I'm going to say. What if capital planning, the vote had been, I had voted against something. Everybody else voted, so it was 5-1-0. And then we brought forth, so it passed by a majority. So then we brought it forth to advisory. I would have a chance to bring it up again and express why I voted against it. I don't see anything wrong with that. And vote, and vote.
All right, let me put it this way, and I'm not trying to be an obstacle. If the board, if the committee wants to do this, I'll vote with you. I will say only that Kathy, if the purpose of this bylaw is primarily to enable advisory members to be part of other appointed boards, then I would suggest focus on that and don't put us something tangential in that could possibly cause argumentation at town meeting. But that's just an opinion.
I think we're taking out more than putting in. So we're proposing to take out B completely.
That's my point. That's my point. If you leave B, if you leave B in, and all you do is remove the word ad hoc and put the period after official, that's a change that is close to 100% chance of passing. If you remove clause B, it's going to be less than 100%. And do you want to take that risk, knowing that you have people on advisory who are on capital, and we need to support that? That's what I'm saying right now.
Tim, I think, Tim, the problem with that is the way that B currently reads, are not Kathy, Jason, and Andrew prohibited from voting on a capital item that comes before advisory?
Yes. And then, I mean, that's right, John.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is let's make their ability to sit on a, what I'm saying is for the first vote, what we're talking about now, we need our advisory members to have the legal ability to sit on a permanent capital planning committee. And we should focus on that and that alone and get it passed. And then if you want to take a second cut at it after you've secured that vote, then look at removing B separately right? You don't want to jeopardize the ability, if capital planning becomes permanent, you don't want to jeopardize the ability of our advisory members to be on both boards. That's what I'm suggesting right now.
And I think the way you accomplish what Tim's trying to accomplish with everything else we just talked about is, remember, there's going to be a separate article at town meeting that we could ask the BOS to slot first, that when you actually come up with the capital planning, whatever the standing language will be around that committee, you exempt it from the provisions of 9.8. And then it allows you to clean this up in a more streamlined fashion for whatever you're looking to accomplish. Because I think the pitch to town meeting and the example is obviously going to be around capital planning and the need to maintain the synergies between this board and that committee. But yet you have two appointing authorities to create the balance that should be needed, as opposed to one appointing authority that could position those committees. Just a thought.
And I think, with all due respect, that we're overthinking this. This is not what we had to endure, 2 years ago, when you had all these huge proposed bylaw changes that went on and on and on and on and just lost everybody. And there was no way anybody at town meeting could understand what was being proposed to be changed. I think this is pretty straightforward. And if you use my example on B, which is if the person on that other committee disagrees with majority, either way, then they'd have a chance on the advisory committee to basically vote what they thought and discuss it, et cetera. So I think if you use that as an example, this is not that hard to explain. And I would hate to break this up into parts. I think you're going to have somebody go, why on earth didn't you just talk about this once? Why are we talking about this again? So I don't think it's hard enough, too complicated. The 9 is easy, adding the vice chair is easy, and then the rest of it is this. I still think it should be done in one fell swoop. And, you let somebody who's very compelling, explain. You let, Marty Healy is a very good explainer in chief. He can do this. He was on advisory. He'll do a good job.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure he will. And again, I'd vote for it. I could see somebody, and I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth, but I could see somebody like John Butler or Al Hamilton not like us removing section B and getting up at town meeting and speaking against it and potentially swaying the audience to shut the whole thing down.
So I've talked to John. John's okay with it. I haven't talked to Al about removing B.
Okay.
I think my only thought about B is it's kind of determining the fact that a vote or the membership of a committee, not advisory, is more important than advisory. So if capital planning takes a vote to approve a capital item, which is also in the warrant, which also needs to be voted on by advisory, you're then saying that vote on capital is more important than the vote on advisory.
I think it's saying that advisory is too important to lose its neutrality.
But I think, I think that advisory has neutrality just in the way that we do business. I mean, just because you're on another committee doesn't really affect that. I mean, there's no personal gain there.
But does everybody agree that the way B is worded now, if 3 weeks from now, capital comes before us on their requests, that Jason, Andrew, and Kathy are prohibited from voting on that by section B? No, Andrew, you don't agree?
No, I'm shaking my head because this issue is becoming apparent as we're discussing it here. To me, it just makes all the more reason why it makes sense to get rid of B.
And this is not why I'm proposing this. So hear me when I say the following. This is not self-serving, but there is a couple issues in the capital plan that has been proposed that I actually voted for, but might change my mind depending on where we end up with the overall budget. And I want the ability to be able to do that. And right now I can't. Now, I'm still not going to be able to because this is good, it's not going to be approved when we do this, but it would help next year. I mean, we're stuck with it this year for sure.
I don't think, based upon the reading of this now, that capital can come before advisory on any request, because you're gonna have three people that have to abstain.
Unless Paul Semino appoints two people.
Right, that's right.
I agree with you, John.
Or one of us steps down.
Okay, so it sounds like if I'm reading the committee, we're not going to vote tonight. I want people to think about this. I want Judy to redline it, send us a copy of the red line as far as what we have talked about doing, and then we will vote on it on December 2nd. As far as whether we do want to ask Sports Selectmen to sponsor this amended article. And then of course they've got to look at it too. We know what they're going to say as far as exact wording in it. So we've got, got a couple weeks to think about this. So I'm not sure it's really worth discussing much more at this point, but it does sound like we've got everybody in agreement with adding vice chair, everybody in agreement with changing 9 to 7, everybody in agreement with getting rid of ad hoc. And then the question is, do we get rid of all of B, or do we just get rid of not counting for purposes of a quorum?
I'm in favor of olive, but we'll see. What
Who
the
said
group-
that? Andrew Pfaff?
Yep.
Okay, Jason?
I want to see how the capital planning bylaw is written, because I think they need to go hand in hand.
So you're
Right.
talking about the capital planning bylaw that makes it a permanent committee?
Yes. Because it's going to be two separate warrant articles at town meeting. And I think I need, again, I'm not an attorney, but I need to make sure the language, I don't want to say yes tonight and then have something conflict. I mean, we'll obviously work through it, but I'm in support of the general concept. I think the wording and the vetting process of how we deal with the potential concerns of advisory's ability to be independent should be subject to further conversation. But B, as currently worded, is incredibly confusing and I think defeats the purpose. There may be a way to craft that to, I think, what the goal was, while eliminating all this uncertainty. I don't want to go there yet because I think it may cause more confusion.
So are you going to spearhead the drafting of the, or at least make sure it gets done?
Yes.
'Cause that would not be a hard one to draft. You would think somebody could get that done pretty quick.
You would pretty much take the current charge, think about whether it's the right membership, and it obviously needs a discussion of capital planning, and ultimately BOS as the appointing body needs to weigh in on what their views are. We obviously heard what Mr. Healy's views were when capital planning was in front of them, but I don't know that the other four members weighed in. Obviously, Lisa is currently a member of capital planning as well, sitting on the board.
As far as I know, BOS has no similar restrictions, just so you know, as far as how many committees they can be on, whatever. So Jason, you'll make sure that they keep that on their list to get done?
Yes. And it's going to be on our agenda in 2 weeks for capital planning.
Okay, all right. So I think we've done what we can. So Judy, your job is to redline this based on what we said and redistribute, so we've got something to look at, make sure we're all looking at the same words.
All right.
Okay. So I'd say, Judy, do two different red lines. Both of them should change the 9 to 7. Both of them should add the vice chair. Both of them should get rid of ad hoc in that first paragraph, and then give us two versions that one eliminates B completely, right? And so you make the restriction singular in that first paragraph. And then the second one leaves it there, but gets rid of the counted for purposes of quorum. And if you got any questions, just call me.
Well, I'll watch it over again, try to figure all
Yeah,
this out.
see, that's the beauty of these YouTubes. You can go back and look, can't you?
Yeah.
Yep. No reason not to. Okay, all right. So everybody happy with stopping there?
Yes.
Let's keep going. Okay, we've already, I combined the COVID discussion with the chair's reports. We've done that. Discussion of the CPC work, that's a standing item. There's not a whole lot to discuss since we talked about it last time, unless Jason disagrees.
Yeah, I think there'll be an update at our next meeting. So whenever the next meeting is.
So I want to jump to any other matters, and I'll come back to the calendar. So there's a couple things there. Andrew Dennington, as we know, is going to spearhead the effort to educate us on the proposed downtown initiative bylaw. And so he wanted to give us a quick update tonight on where things stood with that.
Sure. So kind of taking as a starting point where we were in the meeting we had in February or March, where EDC came before us with a first draft of a downtown zoning bylaw. And, you know, it was a starting point, but it was still very rough. I'm pleased to report we're now much farther along in that. And this is as the result of town having hired a zoning consultant, Judy Barrett, who created a draft. And I mean, the first draft I looked at, it's in a form which is very recognizable. And what it does is it creates a new zoning district for downtown called the Downtown Business Village District. And one of the core things it does, which is not in the current zoning bylaw, is it permits mixed use development in a downtown business village district. And it defines a mixed use development as a development that includes both residential uses and non-residential uses within a single structure. The idea being that there would be the kind of the non-residential use on the first floor and a residential use on the second floor. So the Board of Selectmen held a meeting, I think on November 10th. And I watched the YouTube video of it. And one thing that was very encouraging to me was there was almost full participation from the EDC, and there were, I think, at least 3 people from the planning board. Those are 2 really key groups to get together in terms of having this move forward. The planning board still need to hold a hearing on any proposed zoning amendment. I don't think that has been advanced to the point where it's going to be it's scheduled yet. But another thing that was very encouraging to me was Marty Healy and Lisa Brasio look like they are kind of helping to shepherd this process through. And at the beginning of the month, I think Mark Purple circulated a document which asked for specific comments on details of this bylaw. So it's already going through a round where there were a lot of very substantive comments. And now the discussion is really in a nitty-gritty phase about, you know, like what floor area ratios should be in the bylaw. So I just wanted to tonight give a very, you know, broad overview of it. And the broad overview to me is this has advanced far greatly in the last 6-9 months in a positive way, so that whatever amendment is put on the warrant, it'll be if someone asks, well, how was this document created? It'll have been created as a result of a very lengthy deliberative process that potentially a lot of different people could speak to. So that's where it stands. And the Board of Selectmen is having another follow-up meeting about this on the 24th. That's Tuesday. I've got it on my calendar, and I'm planning to attend, or if I can't make it, watch it on the YouTube video to keep advisory informed.
And so you'll let us know when you think it's in final form, so that we really can.
Yeah, that could be a while, but yeah, I will let you know that.
Is it still at 10%?
What do you mean by 10%?
So, I mean, the purpose of it is to promote mixed use, which is great. The draft I saw from November 5th was fairly explicit that the actual mixed use part of it could be as low as 10% in terms of having like a business in one part. And
Yeah.
the business was, up, it could be as small as 10% of the gross square footage. Which,
Okay, so I'm looking at the V3 version 3, November 15th. I think today is the 18th, is it? So this is pretty recent. And you're right. The definition of mixed use development does say the total gross floor area of the non-residential uses shall be at least 10% of the gross floor area of the structure.
and then you also notice that they added a new use, which is apartments up to 8 units. So when you combine those two things, what you start to see a picture right away is that we are going to have apartment buildings up and down this area, and we're not going to have mixed use.
Well, one thing I think is important is that any mixed use development that's, okay, I'm looking here to make sure. So there are certain types of development that would be allowed as of right without having to go to get a special permit, and others that would require a special permit. And some you would go to the planning board to get a special permit, and others you would go to the ZBA. So
We're talking about an area. What's the zoning right now of this area?
I couldn't tell you
I
the
think
exact name of it.
is it called Business Village right now?
I don't know.
I think it is, and it's mainly comparable to what we have for Res A and Res B. And then you have this one bullet, and not you, I'm just saying in general, you have this one bullet point that comes out of nowhere that says multifamily housing up to 8 units. And that's not seen anywhere else in our town bylaw, in our zoning map, for any areas that are even remotely residential. And the fact that it's in here, it's being slipped in, really bothers me. Especially when you combine it with the fact that they're putting in a definition of mixed use, which is only 10% of the overall gross square footage. To me, this seems like a very obvious ploy to get apartment buildings in this area.
So I'm looking at the part you're referencing, and this is permitted use by special permit from the planning board. So it's not what you're talking about there. Multifamily housing up to 8 units is not something that someone could just make an application.
Do it. They just need a permit from the planning board, which isn't that difficult to get. But the point I'm trying to make is that in the current zoning for Business Village, this clause does not exist, permit or no permit.
Yes, it does.
Does it?
The district, subsection C, permitted uses by special permit from planning board are as follows: major residential development and multifamily dwellings if within a major residential development over 2,000.
All right. A major residential development is over 8. This is up to 8. So that's a very big difference. In a major residential development, there is a required affordable housing clause. This does not have that. This is a very different clause that's been slipped in.
But it's over 2,000 square feet.
This seems to be a substantive discussion that I think we all would benefit the opportunity to read what Andrew and Tim are looking at. And I mean, right now, I'm just kind of trying to follow along, and I'm not having a very easy time of it.
Yeah, it's so the point of this was, it's not a specific agenda item. So I put it here just to have Andrew update us on kind of where he is. So I think that we probably should stop discussing it. We can add it as a standing item if we want to going forward, but going much further probably is not appropriate as far as getting into the details. I just really wanted, because we had appointed Andrew to basically monitor this and lead us through this. I just wanted him to give us a quick update on where things stood as far as the process goes, not necessarily to get into the actual substance of the bylaw.
Yeah, the bottom line and just the takeaway is the process is actually pretty far along and detailed. So it's the most, to me, concrete proposed downtown zoning bylaw change that you've seen in a long time.
And we'll have them in front of us to discuss this. So we'll have plenty of chances to talk about the details. Okay,
I wasn't looking to shut down the discussion. It's just that, I mean, Tim brings up some good, important points, and I just don't have anything that in front of me, nor have I read anything on it.
yeah, I didn't think you were, John. So I was about to say what I was going to say, what I said anyway. All right, okay, so let's let that be our discussion for that for the night. So thank you, Andrew, for the update. A couple other things that are going to be on the agenda soon. Again, not to discuss, these are just things that we're looking at. You're going to see, first of all, Tom LaFlamme has not set up our OneDrive yet. I've tried to get set up, but he's been really busy. So it's going to be set up, I hope, tomorrow. The letter that was sent to the various departments will be there, so you'll see it. It didn't change other than changing the date for town meeting from what you saw last meeting. But it does have the list of departments, liaisons, dates, etc. You're going to see where I added one more for me, which is the benefits, which we don't usually take a hard look at. But Andrew Pfaff has been doing some work comparing the cost of our plans to Ashland, and we see quite a few significant differences that are not favorable. So we're going to look at that closer too. So that's an FYI. Another thing that we're going to talk about next time is whether we want to propose that we ask the state to do a financial audit of the town. They have the ability to do it. We don't know what the cost is. It's at a cost, you pay them. And they've done about half of the towns in Massachusetts at this point. They do some specific audits, but they also do overall financial audits. So we're going to talk about that too next time too. So that is other matters at this point. So now I'm going to go back to the calendar. So we've got.
Can we just get a copy of that email you sent to the department heads, just so we
Yes.
have it?
Yeah, I'll send it as soon as we hang up here. I really thought I was going to have it on OneDrive before the meeting, but I'm not there yet. Apparently, they really did have a hard time today with something in the town, and I was told to be very easy on Tom LaFlamme. And said, I'm going to be hard on Tom LaFlamme. Okay, so dates. We've got 7 meetings set up. The first 3 weeks in December, the 2nd, 9th, 16th, and then the first 4 Wednesday are the Wednesdays in January. So they're all set up. You should have gotten invitations from those in the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours. Does everybody know that if you actually accept that instead of and not versus not accepting it, that I can tell whether I've got a quorum or not? So please always accept those. Plus, you can put it on your own calendar too when you do that. So it kind of helps you guys to maintain at least your town calendar. So the second is going to be EDC and Youth and Family Services. That's our first 2. Okay.
Yeah.
The 9th is going to be Police and Fire. And then the 16th is going to be, I got to pull it up. It's going to be Library for sure.
Yeah.
I think DPW was the 16th.
Yeah, that's it. I agree. So it's DPW and Library. All right. Anybody have any questions about the 3 meetings? So we're breaking for Thanksgiving, and then we'll be back in 2 weeks. All right. Any public comment? I'm not sure who's there.
The only one in the public is Claire. Looks like she's signed in from 2 devices, so.
Okay. All right. So no public comment. Motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Judy moved.
Second,
Jason seconded. Roll call vote.
Buds,
Judy?
yes.
Judy, aye.
Yeah.
Okay. Cook, aye. Dennington? Andrew?
Aye. Aye.
All right. Malinowski?
aye.
Martell?
Aye.
Pfaff? Andrew Pfaff say yes.
I didn't hear him, and it looks like he dropped as he was unmuting.
All right, so we're going to have that's fine, we got plenty. So Rooney, Mr. Rooney?
Aye.
Okay, so 601. Mr. Rooney, it's 8:31. I almost did it.
Very good.
All right. All right, see everybody soon.
Okay.
Thanks all.
All right. Have a nice Thanksgiving to the extent you